I'm also going to flag One Nation's amendment to the legislation. This amendment will correct a grave injustice imposed on veterans and serving members of the Australian Defence Force. This amendment is about fairness. It's about the proper application of the rule of law. It's about standing up for the men and women who were ordered to fight a war in Afghanistan. It's about a Labor government which has turned its back on the brave Australians. When our soldiers were deployed to Afghanistan, they were asked to fight an enemy who wore no uniform and which hid among civilians. Our people had a clear set of rules to follow when engaging this enemy, which in turn did not consider himself bound by the same rules. Our soldiers operated in hostile territory where almost anyone they encountered could be an enemy. I know this because I visited Afghanistan to see it for myself. And then our soldiers came home. 41 of them did not return alive. Hundreds more were wounded. Many came back struggling with their experiences and the impact they had on their physical and mental health. Many of them still struggle today. And then in 2024, Labor betrayed our veterans. Labor changed the rules under which our soldiers operated in Afghanistan years after our deployment was finished. Labor changed the definition of hors de combat in the criminal code. Before this change, the law required a full set of conditions for someone to be considered hors de combat. Labor wrote that test apart. Labor made it easier to prosecute our soldiers. And then Labor made this change retrospective. They went all the way back to 2002, back to when Australians were serving in combat under a different set of rules. They went back to cases still before the courts. This was wrong. It was wrong because it's completely unfair. This betrayal sends a chilling message to every serving member of the ADF and every former member. Serve your country, risk your life, do the job you were ordered to do, and many years later we'll rewrite laws to make it easier to prosecute you. Australians will not accept that. They know our soldiers did not choose these wars. Our soldiers did not write foreign policy. They did not decide where to deploy. They obeyed their orders. They served Australia. They did the hard, dangerous work that politicians in this place asked of them. Yet Labor is happy to change the legal rules after the event. This government calls it a technical correction. That is the usual Canberra excuse, but ordinary Australians know the difference between a typo and a law that makes prosecution easier. If the change has no real effect, why make it retrospective? Why reach back more than 20 years? Why apply it to proceedings already underway? The government cannot have it both ways. Labor cannot say the change is meaningless while insisting it must apply to past conduct and current cases. This amendment restores the definition that existed before Labor changed it. It restores the legal framework which applied when Australian personnel served. It restores the basic principle of justice. You do not change the rules after the game has been played. No one is above the law. No one is asking for immunity. Where there is credible evidence of wrongdoing, it should be tested properly. But the law must be fair. The process must be fair. The government must not tilt the scales against Australians who served in uniform after the fact. This is where Labor has failed. This government is quick to talk about supporting veterans. It is quick to stand at memorials. It is quick to speak about service and sacrifice on Anzac Day. But words are cheap. Real support means standing by the people you sent into harm's way. Real support means ensuring they are judged under the law that existed at the time. Real support means refusing to turn veterans into political targets. Instead, Labor has chosen to make prosecution easier. It has chosen retrospective lawmaking, and it has chosen to abandon the principle that Australians should have certainty about the laws that govern them. That is not support for veterans. That is a betrayal of veterans. This amendment draws a line. It says Parliament should not change the rules after the fact to make it easier to prosecute Australian soldiers. It says fairness matters. It says the rule of law matters. And it says this Parliament must not turn its back on the people who put their lives on the line for Australia. I urge senators to support the amendment.
Afghanistan was not a tidy war. There were no uniforms on the other side, no clear front line, no easy way to tell friend from foe. Australian soldiers had to make life or death decisions in seconds while sticking to strict rules of engagement the enemy never bothered with. 41 Australians did not come home. Hundreds carry wounds you cannot always see. That is the environment we are talking about. Not a courtroom, not a comfortable committee room, a war zone. Now here's the twist. In 2024, Labor quietly changed the legal definition of hors de combat, a term that decides whether someone is considered out of the fight and protected under the laws of war. The old test was strict and specific. The new one is looser, easier to apply against our own soldiers. And here's the kicker. They made it retrospective, back to 2002, applying to cases already before the courts. Imagine being judged tomorrow by a law that did not exist yesterday. That is not justice. That is a moving target.
Think of it like being fined for speeding under a limit that gets lowered 5 years after you drove past the sign. Nobody would accept that on the roads, so why accept it for the people who served in the most dangerous conditions imaginable? This is where One Nation draws a line. Their proposed amendment restores the pre-2024 definition, the one that was actually in force when our soldiers were in the field. Not immunity, not a free pass, just the simple principle. You were judged by the law that existed at the time you acted. That is the bedrock of fair legal process, and it should never be negotiable.
And let us talk about the hypocrisy for a second. Anzac Day speeches, wreaths, solemn nods to sacrifice, all good and well. But real respect is not a photo opportunity. It is defending the legal ground veterans stood on when they served. You cannot applaud someone on the 11th of November and rewrite the rules against them in December. This debate is not about politics. It is about whether Parliament stands by the people it sent to war, or lets convenience trump consistency. Fairness matters. The rule of law matters. And those who put their lives on the line deserve better than shifting goalposts. That is the story. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and we will see you in the